Veterans are the lifeblood of American freedom, serving in some of the harshest situations to secure that freedom across the globe. This is the Lounge with Legends show, celebrating their transformation from battlefield to business. The Lounge with Legends show with Marty the Moac Martinez and James A. Phelps, a.k.a. Spartan 6.
I messed up on that one, James.
Man, thank you for the intro on that one. I was like, gosh, I hate it when I get all big screen like that.
I know. I was trying to do too many things. What is going on, brother?
Doing well. How are you doing? That's what I should be asking first.
I am at the tail end of COVID, so I still have COVID brain, as evidenced by that right there. I sound like I have COVID, so it is. Yeah, it's been crazy. But
I think looks like a new feature might be hair loss, I guess. I don't know, man. Hopefully that's not the case. No, I'm just messing with you. On a serious note, I'm glad that you're feeling better. I know your family's been dealing with that, and my prayers and thoughts are with you all.
It's good, and we're getting through it. As everyone in around the world and in the country is we're all getting through it. But hey, real quick before I forget, I've got to bring it up. Our brothers over at Triple Nickel, they need your help. We had Chris McPhee on 2 weeks ago, and we had Ruben on, and they are in the so PenFed is doing Black History Month. They're doing a poll. A pitch contest. And what they're doing is our brothers made it to the semifinals, and you need to go out there and you need to vote for them. It's just today's day 2. There's 8 days left. You got to go out there and vote. It doesn't cost you anything. Go out there, click on the link, and vote. Vote for them, please.
Vote. Hey, these guys have a great message, great story, great mission. Go vote. All our viewers you're watching, please support. It doesn't cost you $1. But you're going to help them win this contest, and that means a lot.
25. They get an opportunity to come out to Virginia and pitch for $25,000. And if you don't know anything about Triple Nickel and what they do, they're all about unity through diversity. They celebrate all of us together and what and how diverse we are. That's what brings us together. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. So please support our brothers over there.
And they're a bunch of disabled veterans.
Yeah, they are. But and then for us, James, what do we got coming up here in a bit?
So we got a couple of good things. I think you made the announcement last week with the Podfest down in Orlando.
Yes, sir.
Guinness, what is it? A Guinness World Book of Records or something? You're gonna
Guinness Book of World Records. I thought I had the COVID, but
I know I got the speech impediment. My mother's Korean.
So we are going to be in Orlando May 26th through the 29th. Featured speakers, Podfest. We'll be there. I will have, hopefully next week, we'll have our special link so you can come out, get the discounts, and check it out. It's going to be an amazing event. They're going to have like 5,000 speakers there. It's absolutely amazing.
That'll be another opportunity for A-Rod to give us another salute. To suit.
There you go.
Right.
That's where I messed up. That was the glitch. I was trying to find his commercial. And I clicked on that.
Well, the other thing, another big announcement, and we'll get off ourselves because the show's not about you and I, but we also have a big event here in Raleigh, February the 18th at the City Club.
Yes, City Club Raleigh.
Yeah, so we're actually having that. I mean, I don't know if you want to mention
Avengers Guide to Personal Branding. Your boys here will be teaching personal branding and marketing for young entrepreneurs at the City Club. It's like $35 if you're a member, $45 if you're not. Come in, have lunch. It's an hour of power, and we're going to drop so many knowledge bombs on why do you need personal branding and how to do it, more importantly, in 1 hour while you get some amazing food at the City Club. I'm excited for that.
From the best views in Raleigh. That's the best site you can have. Best views in Raleigh, North Carolina. Come out and support us, support the club, and look forward to seeing you all next on the February the 18th.
All right. So enough about us. Let's talk about this episode. I called it the one with the freedom leaders, which is bold, because if you know anything about everyone who's been on the show, we've had from General McChrystal all the way down to E4s to weirdos like us. And here we're saying, here's a freedom leader, and she wasn't in the Air Force, Army, Navy, but we call her this. So it's pretty neat because of what she's done. She's worked to release these impoverished victims around the world, helping people with religious freedoms. I mean, she's so much on her own. It was part of organizations. We had to get her on this show, and because it was such a great.
And she's got a busy schedule. She's got a very busy schedule.
Yes.
So and we'll let her talk about what she's doing. But the main fun fact, I got to get this out there though, is I'm kind of biased toward this, but they say that siblings of Air Force veterans are more intelligent than everyone else. Is that too bold to say?
I'm not. I don't know. Maybe.
Oh wait, I'm an Air Force dependent. I'm sorry, that was kind of a biased opinion. But anyway, on a serious note, she does have both her parents served in the Air Force. Amazing story. I can't wait to get her in the lounge. It's going to be a great episode for sure.
All right. And so if you're wondering who we're talking about Mrs. Tina Ramirez. Let's bring her in. We've talked enough. Let's get her in here. Let's see. Yeah, unfortunately,
twice in one episode. I don't know if I can handle that.
So, hello, welcome. Yeah, we're excited. This is really awesome to have you here. I know we've been playing cat and mouse trying to get you on here, and so it's good to finally get you onto the show. So, thank you for being here.
Oh, it's great to be with you both. James, Marty, thank you for having me. I was very humbled by your introduction. I don't know if I'm any more intelligent than the next guy that didn't, have their parents serve in the Air Force, but I think my brother is actually, I'm currently still in the Air Force Reserves, and he was flying the evacuations from Afghanistan last summer. I feel like he's pretty intelligent, so maybe that's my link, but I don't know. I appreciate the vote of confidence.
But yeah, so James always likes to throw intelligence things out there for himself. But anyway,
does it just apply to the Air Force, James, or is it anything?
Well, for the Air Force specific, just my father was a chief master sergeant in the Air Force, and in my family rivalry, as far as like just the fun banter between my uncle, which was Army, and my dad was Air Force. So my whole life it was that fun banter back and forth, and then ultimately I kind of sealed the deal when I joined the Army. So the Army is better.
So both my grandfathers were Army as well, but my mom and dad ended up going, Air Force, and my brother wanted to fly, so that's what he ended up doing. So
sweet.
So they were Army, not like Army Air Corps or anything like that.
No, they were Army. They were fighting.
Good man. And your parents are Air Force, and you're Mexican and Czech, and so you've got that's kind of a unique mix. And that's the only reason I bring it up. Normally I steer away from stuff like that, but that's a unique mix. So
yeah, I don't know, because the Czech Republic is pretty close to Germany, and there's a lot of Germans and Mexicans that I feel like connect, especially down in Texas. So
Yeah.
It's true, isn't it? I don't
Yeah.
know what it is. I mean, um, my grandfather on my father's side is Mexican. His family immigrated from Mazatlan, and then he went to serve in our army, and he died last year. But a huge hero and vet, and just loved our country. And he's the one that taught me so much about service, really.
Yeah.
Um, and that was my dad's side. But he married a German woman, and and then on my mom's side, my grandfather was Polish, Scottish, the American, mutt essentially. But he, all the way back to the American Revolution, but he married a Czech woman. And so that's where that came from. But he was also a vet in the army. He was a veterinarian, actually. So,
Huh.
yeah.
My wife's a veterinarian. In Texas, there's up by Waco, we have a town called West. So if I say West Texas, I'm not talking about West Texas. I'm saying the town of West Texas. It's a Czech town, and it's very, very Czech. It was great. So, but that's pretty neat. So, I got to get into this. You have a very, and I'm looking over here at your bio. About it's International Religious Freedom Caucus and all this stuff you did. How did you get into all this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun story. My father, I live in Richmond, Virginia, for your listeners that are, wherever they are in the world. Thank you for your service. So my parents met in the Air Force out in Riverside, California, and then ended up, my dad's from out there. My mom is from here. So we ended up migrating back here, and this is where I grew up. And so that's what brought me here. But both of my parents were, my dad was a doctor. He started a little medical practice out in the rural community here. My mom was a nurse midwife and did midwifery mostly to lower income communities. And so I guess growing up, I just saw my parents and then both of my grandfathers really just give their life in service to others. And so during college, I was very passionate about helping people. But in particular, I saw what was happening in the world where people were suffering because of their faith. And, here in America, my father and I are of different faiths, and we were able to have very difficult conversations about our faith and what we believed, and come to a truce and an understanding that we love each other, even if we agree to disagree. And, that was a really important aspect of my childhood and what made me who I am, and my ability to be strong in my beliefs and not afraid of people who believe differently and having those difficult conversations. But around the rest of the world, when I was in college, what I began to see as a person of faith was that these kinds of conversations or even conversions are really lead to death in most situations around the world. People don't have the most basic freedom that my grandparents, that your family served, fought, bled, and died for, which is the freedom of conscience, of belief, of human expression, that are most fundamental inalienable rights, that people around the rest of the world don't have that, and they don't have a culture of freedom. And I'm so grateful for my family and for all of those that have served, that have given us that culture of freedom here in America. But in the rest of the world, it just doesn't exist. And so as a college student, I began to see and meet people that were suffering because of religious persecution in particular, and other forms of oppression. And just my heart went out for them. And I thought, gosh, we are so fortunate to have this kind of freedom here. What can I do to help them have that freedom where they're at? And so that's what really led me on this path for the last 20 years, to help people find freedom that don't have it in the rest of the world.
I mean, that's such a noble thing. I mean, it's a difficult conversation because I know, like, when we deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, the things they tell us to not do is you don't talk about politics and you don't talk about religion. And well, I'm Catholic and I'm not apologetic about it. And so what I would do, because I would eat a lot with the sheikhs and the people I'm with, and so before I eat, I would sign of the cross. And it wasn't to put it in their face. It was just because I'm going to pray before I eat. And that became a conversation. And and instead of being a point of contention or anything, it would be, look, we're all children of Abraham. Let's focus on, kind of like we talked with Triple Nickel, let's focus on what unites us. Our diversity, we also have things that unite us as well, and we can have strong bonds that way. And so, but those are hard discussions, and you've been doing that for 20 years. I did that for a handful of deployments. So that's Very
Well, and
noble.
I would just say to any serviceman, when I go to different countries, I've been to Iraq, to Sudan, South Sudan, Nigeria, some of the Kosovo, places where maybe some of your listeners have been to as well. Uh, what I have found is that being authentically a person of faith is actually extremely, a extremely positive thing, because they see America in, both sides, from Hollywood, all of its glitz and glamour and all of the worst of it.
Mhm.
And they have a certain perception of us. And I think that when we are there as people of faith and able to relate to them as people of faith too, because faith is extremely important for most other people around the rest of the world. Extremely important, then they actually respect you more. And so to be a person of conviction, to live according to those values, they have greater respect for that than people that just don't care or don't take it seriously, because to them that's so valuable. To see that it's valuable to you is really important. And so, but of course you're right, they say don't have conversations over religion and politics, and those are the two things that I've done a horrible job on my entire life. So
No, go ahead, James.
No, I was going to say, I think you hit the nail on the head. The thing is, and Marty said it earlier, we focus in on the differences. We need to focus in on what makes us more alike. And I think if we bring that to the forefront, and then I actually like knowing that I'm dealing with someone that has some type of faith, because if they have some type of faith, there is a connection there, because they have a conviction, they believe in something higher than themselves. So it's easier for me to relate to those individuals than someone that's just, I don't know, whatever, because then they could be, I don't know if the Stoics are the ones that said this. Marty might help me with this, but if you sit back and don't do anything, you're just as guilty as the person that has an opinion. So if you sit back and have no opinion about religion, you're basically are hard to deal with, and you don't know which side you're dealing with. So anyway, I think that's amazing that you're able to have that strong conviction and that faith, and then rely on that faith, and then just move forward and be the light for others, no matter if they have a different belief.
Yeah, we see around the world that religion-related conflict is, one of the greatest, instigators of conflict in the world. You can't look at the situation in Sudan, South Sudan, or Nigeria or Iraq or Afghanistan without really, really seeing that dimension of the conflict as a major flashpoint. And we like to say that, having difficult conversations, talking to people about their differences, bringing people together to learn how to actively engage with one another and be respectful of the fact that they might end up believing very differently, but that's okay. But they can respect the humanity of one another. That those conversations are really important and should be points of a starting point for conversations. They shouldn't become flashpoints of conflict. And when we don't know how to do that, they become those flashpoints of conflict. So what I do in the world, and what I did with my company that I started 10 years ago, is we go into countries like Iraq and we help them learn how to overcome their deepest differences, to recognize and respect in law and in practice throughout society the inherent fundamental rights of one another, in particular the rights of people to believe differently.
And that's your company up here, right? Hardwired Global.
Yeah. So that's Hardwired Global, and that's what I started 9 years ago here in Richmond, Virginia. And yeah.
And so, what's the mission of Hardwired Global?
So Hardwired's mission is really to build a culture of respect for the fundamental freedom of conscience around the world. At its core, that's what we do. So we do work in places like Iraq, where, following the situation with ISIS, it's a situation that America has spent so much money and blood and toil on for many years now, for 20 years or almost 20 years. And it feels like there's never a solution. Like, we can't get out of it. We can't move forward. And I think that's really discouraging for a lot of people that have served there. So what I did with Hardwired is post ISIS, I had worked on Iraq for a number of years prior to this. When I worked in the US Congress, we used to hold hearings on the problems and making religious freedom in particular a red line, because it was a major part of the flashpoint of the conflict there. And when I started Hardwired, I just felt like we needed to address the root causes of that conflict so we could begin to mitigate it long term and not have these recurrent conflicts occur in places like that, where we then have to go back and constantly re-engage militarily or in other ways, or with humanitarian aid. So in Iraq post ISIS, or when ISIS went in, we were actually already working there and began to work with different communities that had literally just, experienced a genocide. So the Yazidis, Shabak, Kakai, Zoroastrians, Mandaeans, both Shia, Sunni Muslim, I mean, you name it, and then the Christian communities. And we brought the leaders together from the different groups, but also key lawyers from the different groups, key media journalists from the different groups, key policymakers from the different groups, and educators. And we began to train them in how to recognize the rights and freedoms of others, and then put those into practice in law and in society in their different spheres of influence. So we did that, and that team ended up working together and built a coalition of over 200 different people of many different faiths and tribes to push back on a law that was going to be passed. Actually, it was passed by the parliament in Baghdad, but when it went to the prime minister's desk, he did not sign it. And that law would have forced children of, if one of your parents is a Muslim, would have forced any of the children, even if they weren't Muslim, because there's just a lot of interfaith marriages there, to have identified as Muslim. And so it would have really violated the faith of the child, but also caused a lot of division in the country. And so they ended up pushing back and preventing that law from going into effect. They then worked to get Kurdistan to actually pass a law that recognized for the first time in their history all 7 different religious communities, including the Baha'i and the Jewish community, which was pretty much non-existent at the time, and which was really historic because both Baha'is and Jews are pretty much persona non grata and outlawed in the Baghdad government. So we were able to change a lot of laws and policies in Iraq that helped bring in a culture of freedom for more people. And then we recognized that it wasn't just the legal culture that needed to change. With ISIS, there was a need for really re-educating children that were being influenced by these ideas. So teachers and policymakers would come to us and say, Tina, even in Kurdistan, an area that was really one of the most safest areas. I mean, that's where the no-fly zone was for many years at post-Persian Gulf War. So that was the safe area and very pro-American for the most part. And in Kurdistan, children on the playground were beginning to play games where they were beheading one another. And it shocked the teachers when they first started seeing it, because they're like, well, wait, we're in this safe area of Kurdistan. Why is this happening? And as we talked to them, what we realized is that unfortunately children identify with the hero, as you know, and to them at the time, ISIS was winning and they were the superhero, and children were really for no fault of their own, subconsciously identifying with them as a superhero. It's like, kids, they play games, cops and robbers or whatever you want to call it. And they always want to be they want to be the good guy. They want to be the hero. And that's what was happening in Kurdistan. And we didn't just see it in Kurdistan. We saw it all over the Middle East, where children were beginning to identify with ISIS because of the territory that they were gaining and the gains they were making in Syria and in Iraq. And it was extremely concerning. So the governments in these countries actually asked us for help. So we went in, I'm a former educator myself, and we began to train teachers in how to actually help children overcome the ideas of intolerance that they were being taught by ISIS or learning through the social, the culture around them. And so now in Iraq, the government's given us full access. Now ISIS is gone, to be training teachers in all of Mosul and the Nineveh Plains, where kids were literally brainwashed by ISIS in their classrooms. We are in charge of retraining all of those teachers and helping those children really overcome the intolerance so that they break that cycle of conflict and don't become the next iteration of ISIS in the future. So that's what we're doing in Iraq, and we do similar programs, educational and legal, around the rest of the world. But it's really exciting to see the fruits of our labor and of how it transforms these cultures. And really going back to what we said about America, building that culture of freedom in countries where really it's a foreign concept for them.
So you're actually on the ground doing this. You're not, doing a pencil whip or a PowerPoint slide about it or writing a paper about it. You're actually there, Tina, doing this.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
When I worked for the U.S. Congress, I had an opportunity to travel to over 30 countries, mostly areas of conflict, and to develop policies to help advance religious freedom in countries that didn't have it. And I started the bipartisan Caucus for religious freedom in the U.S. Congress that did that. I mean, it's one of the few things in Congress they were able to work across the aisle on. So I feel like it was very successful. But, I found that there was a need to get to the root cause of conflict. And that's why I started Hardwired. And we're now operating in up to 10 countries at different times. where we're actually helping them on the ground address those root causes of conflict and begin to mitigate it themselves. So we help train the local leaders so that they can have an indigenous movement of freedom that they are able to sustain themselves. And so it's been just amazing to see firsthand on the ground in countries that I had a lot of relationships with because of all my work in Congress, to see firsthand how they're now, how we're able to work with them and really come alongside them and support them in their local efforts to build that culture of freedom.
Yeah. So you're one of those people that when you're in Congress, speaking of Congress, you're not doing these fly-by-night visits. You've actually, hey, look, I've got boots on the ground. I've worked with them, and you're on both sides, and you're actually doing it. And then that's, that's a hat's off to you. I'm not wearing a hat, but if I did, I'd take it off.
And for all of your listeners, you served overseas, and you know how critical the local relationships are to be able to do anything successfully. And I have not served in the military, but I do understand how valuable that is. When I was on the Hill building those relationships, people were imprisoned and we would help them get out of prison, or if they were, about to be tortured and we were able to, navigate that through foreign policy or, whatever we were able to do. I built a lot of goodwill and allegiances around the world with people that are on the ground dealing with these things every day, both with diplomats and local community leaders. And so when I started Hardwired, I started it with this wealth of resources of human connections and relationships. So when I go into a place like Iraq, and people often ask, well, how can you, just hang out in Mosul? And by the way, I was literally, I think 7 months pregnant or 6 months pregnant when I was in Iraq. I forget, but I was there right after ISIS happened, and I was pregnant and literally visiting all these communities. But they asked me, well, how can you do this? And it's because of the relationships and the trust that I have, that I feel safe everywhere I go, because the local people know, they value that I can help them, and they want to keep me safe because of that. So I never put myself in danger or my staff, but we're always, we have great relationships in these countries, and we're able to do a lot and make a lot of progress because of that.
No, I think the relationship is so crucial. We were there, one of my deployments, November of 2007 to April of 2009.
That was a hard time.
Yeah, we were fighting our way out and back in every night. And then as we're doing this, but what we started doing is, that's when I was talking about, I started just breaking bread with them every day and talking to them and having these discussions. And then my area was Taji, Iraq. So I had the area that was half Sunni, half Shia. And so having these discussions, but by the end of it, I didn't have to have the call to prayer team. I didn't have to have the TPT teams to do it, because they were announcing what we wanted through over the call to prayer speakers, because we had the relationships and we were walking and doing it. And we were walking hand in hand, literally, with the sheikhs and the people there. I remember teaching the kids how to fly a kite. And I'm not in body armor, and I'm teaching them how to fly kites and do things because of these relationships. We were able to stand up the first female radio station, there, which is like unheard of in 2007, but we were doing this because of, again, it's about the relationship. Because at the time I would tell them, and I meant it, is I want to be able to come back with my children and show them the cradle of civilization and why, what this is all about, because this is a beautiful place with beautiful people. And so
it's amazing to visit Iraq and to be able to see those things. People have no idea. And I love it when I do get to take people over there to see firsthand the monasteries and the things that were destroyed. I was actually able to be in Mosul where the Pope was and gave his speech with all of those ancient churches from like the 400s. It was just a few months ago. I was there, and it's unbelievable. It's something that I want Iraq to have freedom. I want to invest in that, because it is the cradle of civilization, and it's a place that everybody should see, and that, is part of our world history that, we should cherish. I actually wrote a book about it. So when I went there when I was pregnant, it wasn't just to help develop a program. I was also writing a book about the history of Iraq, and in particular the Christian church in Iraq in the last 2,000 years of history, because it's one of the largest or the longest histories in the Christian church, and how they've survived in the midst of such persecution over, those 2,000 years. So I'm happy to share it with any of your listeners.
I have your book. It's a great book. And I was looking for it. I was like, I left it upstairs because I'm literally reading it. upstairs by my bed. And it's a very good book. But it's, again, I got to talk about the relationships, and I'll share a funny story. I think it's funny, at least. But one of the Sheikh Sabah, I'll never forget, he invited us over for dinner. And I said, okay, but we're not going to talk about any work, no flus, no money, no nothing. We're just going to have dinner. He said, okay. So we had dinner, and then we watched TV together with the family and stuff like that. And you know what we watched? We watched Cops.
Oh, I was actually going to say a Spanish novella, because it's either Baywatch or it seems like a Spanish novella.
Yeah. So we watched Cops, and we were laughing, and he goes, and he asked, why do you have this show? And I remember saying, Iraq has a lot of idiots. And my interpreter goes, what? Naqib, Captain, you want me to say this? And I go, yeah, say it. And he goes, okay. And he says, Iraq has a lot of idiots. And I said, but in America, we prefer to put ours on TV. And he started laughing. And so we were watching. But that, again, that's part of the relationship, and just having that moment that here you're in the middle of Iraq during a deployment, and you're just breaking bread and watching TV. And then we walk back to our outpost, our combat outpost, So
important. When I was in Iraq in October of this past year, I was with the director of the Religious Affairs Ministry, and it was really sad and heartbreaking in many ways, and also just really poignant. And I think your listeners will understand this. He said to me, Tina, I used to trust America, and this is in Kurdistan. I mean, they love America in Kurdistan, and we've stood with them through so much. He said, but when I saw what happened on January 6th, and then I saw the planes taking off from Afghanistan, and people being just hanging off the planes and dying, and you leaving people behind, including your own people and translators, which we had a lot of translators in Iraq too. One of my best friends was a translator there. He said, I just lost hope in America. It was really heartbreaking for me to hear that. And I'm sure it's hard for your listeners too, because we've invested so much there. And then to see how, politics has turned, their backs on people that, like that Sheikh, like people that stood with us to help us in the war on terrorism and in battling our enemies. It's really hard to see that. But he said to me, Tina, I have hope in you. So those personal relationships are what are going to carry us through bad policy, essentially.
Right. Now it's, I agree. I think we need the relationships, because, while we did a lot of our training overseas, we always said, nations don't build relationships, the people do.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of what I did over the last 10 years, was built that relationships. And that's what all of our forces did, is out there while we did all these exercises in Africa, Europe, and the Middle East, and we built the relationships, the people did.
And they trust us because of that. And that trust is so critical, for any mission. It's critical.
So here's what I want to do, Tina, with your permission. I want to cut to commercial and then come back and talk about what's going on with this.
Okay, absolutely.
So let's do that. Let's cut to commercial. And since we're talking about religion and all that, let's cut to one of my favorite commercials, my coffee provider, Third Day Seguin Coffee.
When you see a veteran wearing that new outfit, he feels like $1 million. Giving back is key for me, quite frankly. We did an event called Suiting Our Heroes, where we invited everybody to come in and basically donate their gently used suit. Because there's a lot of veterans out there, to be quite frank, that can't even afford a suit. So what we did was we had the community get involved, giving food, giving some soft drinks, and basically come out and donate your gently used suit. What we did with those suits is we went ahead and gave them to veterans that couldn't afford anything because they're gently used. We had them tailored. We donated a shirt and tie to go with that. And guess what? When you see a veteran wearing that new outfit, he feels like $1 million. And he knows he can go out there for the next chapter of his life and feel confident about that.
You're watching the Lounge with Legends TV show with your hosts, Marty Martinez and James A. Feltz.
All right. Oh, James, stop it.
I'm getting text messages. My dad said, "Go Air Force," and then Vardaman is texting us too, saying about her great quote about culture and freedom.
Oh,
absolutely. Now you're getting the viewership is already up, but so Tina, if you're just tuning in, we have Ms. Tina Ramirez on, and we've been talking about the amazing work she's been doing all over the world with religious freedoms. And now we're going to talk about what's going on up here with the state Senate. And that's kind of a new development, and we knew in that there was a change going on. But let's talk about this. Let's unpack this here.
So when we first met, Marty, I was running for the U.S. Congress, and I was running against Abigail Spanberger in the 7th Congressional District here in Central Virginia. And this was such an important seat for us to pick up in Virginia to regain the majority. And, she definitely is someone that I was looking forward to going up against. And unfortunately, with the census and the redistricting, our district got cut up into 4 different pieces. And I was literally placed 75 miles from the new 7th district, which actually encompasses Quantico, so the Marine base. And my opponent was actually cut out of the district too, but she decided to move or to at least run in a district that she doesn't actually live in or represent. And so she's going to be running in the new 7th district. But I've decided that I'm currently living in a district with Rob Whitman, who sits on the Armed Services Committee. He's a great member of Congress, to step aside to let him, clear the field so that he can actually run. Even though I was the front runner, I was ready to win the nomination. So it's a huge disappointment, but I do feel like it is important that we don't fight amongst ourselves right now. And so I want him to be able to continue his role in leadership in the Armed Services Committee, specifically if we regain the majority this coming year, which I believe we will. And then I've turned my attention to the state Senate in Central Virginia in Chesterfield County, where I live. I have built up an enormous base of support across the district, but particularly where I live in Chesterfield, which is one of the largest counties in Virginia. And so I am really looking forward to representing my neighbors and the people that I've been working to serve for the last few years in running for Congress. So that's the role change there. And the state Senate race is just extremely important because, as you may have seen, and Marty, you know this obviously because you live here, but we have a new governor in Virginia, Governor Glenn Youngkin, and he is 2 seats shy in the state Senate of having a majority so that he can actually implement some of his great policy initiatives on a variety of things, education being probably the most prominent one that I've been addressing.
Right. I think everyone in the country heard about that new governor.
Yeah. The shot that was heard around the world, definitely.
Yeah. So you've been serving for so long. Why this? I mean, it's James and I always joke about the why this, why now kind of generic question, but seriously, that's a lot to go through. Why?
It's true. And I'm sure that your listeners ask themselves this in difficult situations every day. It's like, why am I letting people, fire at me or getting shot at? Like, what is it for? And it's the same thing for me, I'm sure, as it is for many of them. It's for freedom. It's because, my company is called Hardwired. I believe we're all hardwired to be free. That is what motivates me every day. And in wanting to serve, in elected office, it's that we have so many freedoms to be grateful for here in America. And I have been extremely blessed to be a part of that. I work for the Beckett Fund that worked front and center with the Obamacare mandate in defending Hobby Lobby and an individual business that was being mandated to provide things that they didn't want to provide in their healthcare bills or plans. I think that businesses and individuals deserve their individual freedom, individual liberty. And that's something that the government shouldn't be encroaching upon. And unfortunately, we see our country going in the wrong direction. And I think it's a disservice to everybody that's served, that sacrificed their lives, their families' lives for our country, for our freedom. We deserve better here. We deserve far better than what we are being given right now in our country, both at the national level and obviously at the state level here in Virginia, what we've had to deal with in the last couple of years. I don't think churches and places of worship should be shut down because of the coronavirus. I think that if people want to go and worship and take communion, Marty, for a long time, Catholic worshipers could not go and just get communion. I mean, people couldn't worship privately in their car in a drive-through church service. We have had our most basic freedom, the freedom that of conscience gives us comfort in times of difficulty and trial. And yet that was what came under attack more than anything in the last year or two. And then our freedom of speech and of expression. And we've seen that just been obliterated in the social media space over the last year. And I've written about a lot of these issues. We've seen in our schools, they're shoving critical race theory down our kids' throats. I mean, James, you are obviously from an interracial family. My daughter is biracial. I am incensed when my daughter is being in a school environment that would teach her to look differently at me because I have a Caucasian face when, she's biracial. It's just, I fought for human rights around the world. And I just think that we deserve better in America, in a country that gave me the ability to fight for these freedoms for other people that don't have them, that inspired the world of inalienable rights and freedoms, that inspired the world on religious freedom with Thomas Jefferson, who's a hero here in Richmond, Virginia. I think that there's something really wrong in America right now. And that course needs to be righted. That culture of freedom that I fought for around the world, I don't want to lose it here. And that's what motivates me every day, as hard as it is, as disappointing as it can be. I mean, we have to fundraise and go out there and campaign. And I have never given up my day job because I believe in public service as an act of service, not of living off the people. And so I just, I will sacrifice my time, my energy, my resources to do this because I believe in America and what it stands for. And I want my daughter to grow up in an America where she can be proud of that too.
So I want to add a question. You mentioned your family. How do you prepare your family for a race like this? Because, the freedoms, that you're trying to defend and everything else, I imagine some of your freedoms are kind of not taken away, but you get a cold, tight hold because you're under a microscope, running for these positions. So you're kind of like maybe possibly giving up some of your personal or family freedom, So how do you deal with that? How did you deal with that with your family?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, James. So I'm a single mother, which makes it a little unique for me in that it's just me and my daughter, and her father's not in her life. So I have a family of two. And, I didn't have her in the public space before the campaigning, and I started first running for Congress 3 years ago. So this is a new kind of area for us. It was a little scary, to be honest, just to, put my daughter out there because as a single mother, I was always very protective, but I will tell you, it has been such a blessing to have her with me through all of this. Sometimes she gives me my speeches. When I get discouraged, she's the one that comes in and tells me, Mom, you've got to fight because you want to do what's right, not what's wrong. And you believe in this. And I just can't tell you how incredible it is that I am raising a young woman that sees her mother as a role model and that she can grow up to be a conservative woman and a leader too, instead of what the media is telling her that she can't, or that because she's biracial, she has to think or look a certain way. I want her to be a free thinker and to have the world of opportunity. And she's seeing me model that for her. And so whatever the outcome is, I am grateful for the journey and what it's done for my family and the blessing that it's been to meet so many incredible people across my, across Virginia, across the country that have been supportive of me during this race. I was on Glenn Beck's program a few months ago, and somebody sent me a t-shirt that said, underestimate me, that'll be fun. And I just, to whoever that was, it was so sweet. It's been so much fun. I am energized by freedom. And if that's the model that my daughter sees and how hard it is, I mean, she sees the hardship of it too, but it'll make her a stronger person too. Life isn't going to be easy. It's not been easy for most of us, but it's how we respond to it and how we pull through that matters. And that's what I'm showing her every day.
Right. Wow. And I think for our viewers out there, whether you agree or disagree with Tina's beliefs, you have to agree about our freedoms, and that's kind of what we talk about. I mean, we talk about freedom means and what it means, and that's the divisive issues and bring people to the table and having the discussions. And I think we've had those conversations here on the show before, is just coming back to the table, having the coffee and having the hard discussions again. We need more of that in America. If I don't believe in critical race theory, or I do believe in critical race theory, it doesn't matter. Let's have the discussions again. And I think we need more of that in our lives. Personally, I think that it's easy for us to, be warriors behind our phones and say, here, kind of like what you're seeing right now with all this Spotify nonsense, where these people are like, well, pull my stuff off of Spotify because at one time I was a freedom lover and now I'm not. It's just stop, have conversations again. And so that's kind of my thoughts on all this, because as
Tina said it best earlier when she's talking about Iraq and talking about that trust, right?
Yeah.
It goes back to the three principles of a relationship, the curiosity, the trust, and then finally you have the commitment. With no trust, you have no relationship. And I think that's where we need to focus more on the trust, focusing on there, and then actually be able to communicate. And like you said, Marty, have those conversations, those tough conversations, and not just go in all defensive, but just actually say, hey, look, let me hear what you have to say, and then let's talk this out. So, yeah.
And I think kind of, I'm going to take, kind of what we were talking about before. We talked about the nations don't build relationships. I don't think our political parties are building relationships right now. I think it's the people, and then finding the people together, and then having the discussions, and then, going back and finding the best candidates that are going to actually go with whatever aligns with your beliefs. And then I appreciate Alan out there, but going back and having the discussions like we talked about. It's okay to talk about religion and politics again, as long as we can have those adult conversations. And I really am, I'm in awe of what you're doing, Tina, because I think we need people that are willing to do what you do in the manner in which you do it, because you are, like we talked about, you're not just somebody who's building a PowerPoint slide or writing a paper. You're a boots on the ground person. And you're going to go out there and do it, whether people believe and agree with you or don't agree with what you're fighting for. They do have to appreciate how you're doing it, if that makes sense.
Well, and you both know that veterans serve the flag. They serve the country. They don't serve a political party. They serve the country and our foundations of freedom, our Constitution. And in going into public office, I feel like it would be great if we could take a perspective like that. I'm going into public service to serve people, to serve my fellow Americans, and to serve the Constitution and the values and the freedoms that I've been blessed with, that we've all been blessed with. And I've been blessed to be able to share with people around the world that don't have them. And in doing this and in making this tough decision, it's because I knew that my voice was so different from my own political party, let alone from what's happening in America today, that it was needed. And that's why I made the tough decision of deciding to run and deciding to, run in this particular environment, was because we don't have a lot of voices out there that can bring people together. And it's something for the last 20 years that I've already proven I can do, whether it's in Congress, which, I built this bipartisan caucus on religious freedom or, in the middle of Iraq in a war zone. So I just think that we need more leaders that can model that for our nation, because to get out of this divisiveness and this divisive culture that we're in, we're going to need more models, more role models like that. And that's what motivates me. I remember being in Iraq with one of the Sunni Muslim judges from Mosul who fled when ISIS came in, and he was in our training, and he ended up deciding to go after the training to help the Yazidis and the Christians begin to access justice in the courts. And he came to me after the second training session and showed me this image on his phone of his 17-year-old brother who was left behind in Mosul. And in the image, he was being beheaded. And I looked at the image and I looked at him and I just said, what does this mean? And he said to me, Tina, this is a warning. And I said, well, he was in charge of one of the courts to bring justice to the victims of terrorism. I said, will you be able to, continue to do your work with the Yazidis and the Christians and help them? And he said, if I don't, this is the reality that awaits everyone in Iraq. And I think that story, when I heard it, when he shared it with me, and then he opened up the door for us to do our educational program in all of Mosul when it was finally, when ISIS was defeated, has really motivated me to understand, we've got to learn to come together because we're all in it together or we're all going to fall together. That's really ultimately what's going to happen. And in America, I hope people will begin to understand that. With all of these different debates and challenges, if you strip freedom of expression from one group, you're going to end up stripping it from everyone. When one freedom falls, all of them will fall, not just for one group, but for everyone. And that's not the kind of society that I want to live in or that I want to hand on to my daughter. So that's why I do what I do.
I love it. That's great. So what are your big hurdles? What do you kind of see as some of your big challenges coming up right now?
Well, for anyone that wants to learn more about Hardwired, you can go to hardwiredglobal.org. And if you want to learn about the campaign, you can it's my name, TinaRamirez.com. And I would love to hear from your listeners. And I would love for them to get involved with me, whichever, aspect of my life they want to get involved in. I think that if you are interested in these kinds of conversations, both domestically or internationally, please reach out to me because I would love to hear from you. The biggest challenge right now, we have taken our educational program that we've done in the Middle East and we're bringing it into schools in America. And I think that this is so critical, but because things are so polarizing in the schools, people are still really afraid. And so one of the greatest challenges is just helping them overcome that fear and say, look, the training that we've done with teachers to overcome intolerance and to build respect for freedom of conscience, freedom of expression, freedom of belief is really important here right now in this environment. And so if there are teachers interested or people working in an educational space that would like to participate with us here in the US, I would love their help and their support. I think that's one of the greatest challenges is just getting it into the schools here in America. And I wrote a whole series of children's books last year based on the lessons that teachers in the Middle East wrote. And so we turned them into stories and we published them. So there are children's books and lessons that go with it and a lot of other resources to do that educationally here. And then, of course, politically, I think it's important for veterans to support candidates that are going to help them fulfill their mission, to reinforce the value of their mission. And so I would love their support in our race and in just bringing that different perspective to the table and helping stand behind them.
All right. Yeah, we'll put your links in the comments after the show, so you can go out and support Tina for the state senate and for Hardwire. But
Thank you.
We appreciate what you're doing. But hey, it's that time that everyone looks forward to. We asked this of all of our legends, and this one's going to be a great one. I've been looking forward to this one. You've served and you've sacrificed and you've done so much for so many. Tina, we ask you, what does freedom mean to you?
Well, thank you for having me on the show, Marty and James, and for just allowing people to have these kinds of conversations and to hear these different perspectives. Freedom for me is really how we're hardwired. I mean, that's my life in a nutshell. I believe that, for me, if we can have the freedom to live with dignity as a human being, to be able to have our own freedom of conscience and of worship, of belief, of religion, this is really the most fundamental freedom that we have. I think it's what makes everything else tick and work in our world. And so for me, freedom is how we're hardwired, and the most fundamental freedom is that freedom of conscience that we have.
Love it. I feel like the entire show has been a freedom means moment. But thanks to A-Rod, salute to Suits and all that he does for our veterans, suiting them up and helping them look good in the suits. Check out our sponsor, A-Rod, salute to Suits, and helping us provide these freedom mean moments. And thank to you, Tina, for all that you have done and will continue to do. And we will put your all your information in the comments. James, any parting words or anything?
No, just honored. Thank you so much for your time. I know how busy your schedule is, so really appreciate for you joining us and our listeners today. And thank you so much for what you're doing, and look forward to seeing what you can do even more in the future.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
Yeah, we'll put all her information in the comments. So please look her up. And thank you. We're gonna put you in the green room now. But thank you so much, Tina. James, that was powerful. I mean, talk about somebody who's done so much.
I find myself getting tongue twisted, but one thing that really stood out that Tina said was, and I just finished this book, and I was reading this book, but it's Ryan Holiday, The Ego is the Enemy.
Yes, sir.
And it talks about you have to have those type of leaders that put their ego aside in order for the greater good. So just her, willing to, change her position on what she was running for shows a lot about her character and her ego, because she put her ego aside, even though she's the front runner and is going to, still go with the Senate race. This is amazing. Yeah. So I appreciate it.
The comments are still coming in, and we already have her in the green room. I feel bad. We could have kept going on with that episode, but no. So hey, next week we've got Josh coming in.
We got a Navy SEAL coming in.
We got a Navy Special Warfare guy coming in. Going to talk about his journey and the things that he's been doing. So looking forward to that episode. Thanks for all that tuned in, and please remember, go support our brothers over at Triple Nickel. Give them a vote on the PID Fed. And I think that's all we got, James, for this week.
Hey, just ask. We can always ask, hey, support us too. We just started the Lounge with Legends LinkedIn channel, or that page. If you could like us there, we really focusing on YouTube and those other platforms, but we're now starting to work in on LinkedIn. And just come and help us celebrate the legends that come to the lounge.
All right, man. Yeah, give us it doesn't cost anything. Go give us a YouTube's like and subscribe, and help us get the word out to help veterans that are in need of the word. So thank you, and we'll see you next week.
You've been watching the Lounge with Legends show, countering the narrative that veterans are all broken misfit toys. Veterans are the lifeblood of American freedom. Serving in harsh situations, coupled with their training, have forged them into some of the most resilient and capable leaders in the world. And that's where we come in, celebrating the success stories, taking you on a journey of transformation from military to business. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll be back soon. But find us on Facebook at Lounge with Legend or at JTF214. Till next time.